Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Able Voices podcast. I'm Dr. Rhoda Bernard, founding managing director of the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education and the assistant chair of the music education department at Berkeley College of Music. And I am proud to present this podcast featuring disabled artists and arts educators. We are inviting artists with disabilities to be guest hosts for the Able Voices podcast. Today's guest host is John Bramblitt. John Bramblitt is an American painter and is also blind. He was the first blind muralist in the world, with murals in both New York and Dallas, known for his bright colors and a style that mixes Impressionism with the modern feel of pop art. John is also the author of the award-winning book, Shouting in the Dark. He has appeared on CBS Evening News with Katie Couric, ABC, NBC, Fox, Discovery Channel, and BBC Radio and TV, to name just a few outlets, and he has been featured in the New York Times and Psychology Today. He also designed the artwork for numerous magazine covers and even the artwork for major film productions. John is the subject of the award-winning documentary shorts Line of Sight and Bramblitt. His art has gone to over 120 countries around the world, and he is known for his interactive speaking events, lectures, and free art workshops where everyone paints together, no matter their ability or disability.
Welcome, friends. This is John Bramblitt, and I am so proud to introduce you to a very special guest, Heather Bergerson. Their work explores the intersection between nature and humanity with a focus on biological survival mechanisms. And if you're not sure what that is, then you definitely want to keep listening because Heather's art takes a deep dive into drawing parallels between carnivorous plants, fungi, and relating that to human behavior. So it's really, really interesting stuff. So without further ado, welcome, Heather, and thank you so much for sitting down with me.
Thank you, John. You said that so well. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate that. Oh my goodness, the last time I talked to you was about a year ago at
Yeah.
an art show that we were doing together, and your art was it just blew me away. I just loved it, and I feel so honored that you're here chatting with me today.
Oh, likewise, John. Thank you so much.
Well, so so for the listeners, like to give them a little bit of back history of you. I know in 2020 you became visually impaired after a car accident,
Yeah.
and that deeply influenced your artistic approach. And I know that you use a whole variety of mediums, printmaking, oil painting, large scale things, collaborative projects. You just do so much, a lot of tactile artwork, just incredible. But I was curious though, how becoming visually impaired after the accident, did that transform your approach to art? Did it change the way you do things or the way you think about things?
Yeah, absolutely. Becoming visually impaired has really forced me to think about my audience and who am I excluding from enjoying the presentation of my artwork. So ultimately, it has really refined um, my perspective on who can enjoy the artwork. I ultimately my creative practice is for myself, right? It's a deep dive into understanding life, like many artists. But I share that with the world, and so having that responsibility of and the privilege to be able to share that with everybody, I think it's really important to think about like who's missing out. And so that's when I started to shift more towards tactile, not only for my own practice, of course, but I am still able to see and and I'm visually impaired. So I get the best of both worlds. I'm both blind and I'm a sighted artist as well. And right, and that's a beautiful thing. I am able to tap into what it's like being a blind person and what it's like being a sighted person. I already know as a sighted person, the work is great. As a blind person, you need to be able to feel the work. Maybe you can't in a lot of galleries and places, and with a lot of other artists that I've spoken to who are visually impaired or later on in life became visually impaired, they've expressed the sadness of not being able to enjoy art anymore. And I want to
Hmm.
change that.
Oh my goodness, yes. Oh, and I love what you said about the art is really for yourself. Like that's where it started for but then you also you make the art for others. You make it so people can have access to the art, which is just that is just incredible. And I know that a lot of your artwork, it has a tactile component to it. Do
Yeah.
you think if you hadn't lost your eyesight that it would do you think if you were still completely sighted that you would do the tactile artwork, or did that push you into making things more touchable for everyone?
That's a really good question. And actually, when I really think about it, my whole process is very tactile to begin with. So, whereas before maybe I didn't quite realize that, right? But I handle even my paintings, they're very sculptural. Like, I'm a palette knife painter, I love impasto paint.
I love that about your work.
Thank you. And so that was part of my practice even before becoming visually impaired. And it was more of this realization and awareness that came about when I became visually impaired, that shifted more towards like uh more, I guess, more of a focus and more attention towards tactile work.
That makes sense. Yeah, and I think it's interesting that it seems like you're using your art to be like a voice, to be able to reach out to other people and make art accessible for other people. But I've also noticed that you seem to have an interest in working with other artists, and you
Yeah.
work on collaborative projects, like you worked on the Tripping the Light Fantastic. I'm wondering, do you like working with other artists? What does that do for you? How does does that is it enjoyable, or does it change your artwork?
I love working with other artists. I feel like, I step in between being an introvert and an extrovert. Ultimately, I love being social. I need people around. I get a lot out of talking with other artists and sharing ideas and just feeding off of each other's energy. So, in short, yes, I love working with other artists, as long as it works well, because not everybody is compatible with each other. But when we're talking about Tripping the Light Fantastic, for example, that was a Paseo Festival project in 2019, so before the pandemic. And that was really enjoyable. That was such a cool project to do. And yeah, and I loved every bit of it. Yep.
That is wonderful. You know, one of the things that I find the most interesting, and at first I think it's one of the things that's hardest for people to understand, but your use of nature, the symbolism with nature that you bring into your artwork. And at first I think it's so interesting because at first the concept, it seems like it's harder for people to get, but then whenever they're looking at the artwork or they're experiencing the artwork, it's just like this light bulb goes off and it's just incredible. And it's just I don't know. I love how you use the symbolism that you do, but I'm curious because I know that your artwork, it often explores the relationship between carnivorous plants, fungi, and then you relate that to human behavior. And where did that come from? Where did this idea of the carnivorous plants and then relating it to humans? What first gave you that idea?
Yeah, so that goes way back. First off, I'm just fascinated by nature. Nature is incredible, and we can learn so much from nature in every aspect. We are human beings, and essentially we're animals, right? For me, specifically towards carnivorous plants and fungi, it all really started with carnivorous plants, and it was more of my interest at the time. Actually, still it's an ongoing interest about the concept of fear.
Mm,
So when we think about fear is a survival mechanism that all animals have, right?
mhm.
And I started So there's a feminism aspect to this as well. I started to kind of dig deep into understanding the core of toxic masculinity. As a woman, as a female artist, as a mother,
Mhm.
that topic, that's a hot topic.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
And during that time, when I really started to dive into carnivorous plants, it was back in 2016, and they're just socially and politically with the hashtag Me Too movement going on. It just brought more and more questions to my attention, and I was trying to find answers to my questions, questioning about my own life and my own experiences and what I've gone
Mhm.
through, what my friends have gone through. And then I was like, let's change this dynamic a little bit. Let's just change the story a little bit, and let's pretend we're Venus flytraps. We're not delicate flowers. So that's ultimately where it started. Still deeply rooted with the concept of fear as a survival trait.
Mhm.
And then it sort of morphed. I went down this like rabbit hole. So I consider myself a research based artist where whatever subject I'm moved by, I really dive deep into the books to find out more. I dive into the history, the mythology, all of that. And so all of those components make up my body of work. So it's very deeply process oriented. And as I started to sort of figure, not all the answers or all the questions are answered, but as I started to understand a bit more about this subject, toxic
Mhm.
masculinity, I started to understand a bit more about why it even came to be what it is. And then I started to recognize some really interesting synchronicities with how, like Charles Darwin, for example, how he would describe Venus flytraps. And
Mm.
it's in a very misogynistic language. And I found that
Really?
interesting.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised from that era. That doesn't surprise me, but how interesting. How did he describe it?
I you know what, John? I didn't come prepared with a quote, and I wish I
Oh,
had,
that's okay. Sorry. I put you on the
but
spot, didn't I?
but yeah, I grew this like relationship with these species, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, I, in a weird way, I was like, I hear you, I see you. You're beautiful, and yes, you're scary because you eat insects, but you're doing it to survive, right? And no, you don't eat humans. Like all these crazy, like imaginative things that come about, like Little Shop of Horrors and stuff like
That
that.
is that is wonderful, and I
Yeah.
know that your artwork's beautiful, and but taking the plants and nature like that and using it as symbols. I know that artists have used symbols, of course. That's what artists do have done, but I find like the way that you use them is very unique. It's very, very special. And I
Thank
was
you.
wondering because for our visually impaired viewers, and of course, one of the wonderful things about a podcast is that it's talk, so everybody's visually impaired who's listening to this. They can't see a painting of yours. I was wondering if you could just briefly describe what one of your paintings, one of your art pieces.
Sure. And let's see. So behind me right now, I have a painting of I call it the Venus flytrap study.
Mm.
And it's an 18 by 24-inch oil on canvas. And it is, there's a Venus flytrap that's open. So it's depicted, the focal point is in the center, and it's open up wide. So it looks as if it's ready to catch something. The Venus flytrap itself is very impasto, and so it sticks out from the background, which the background is a very abstract colors of black and red and green and yellow, and they're just kind of all blurred into the background. The
Oh,
Venus
wow.
flytrap itself has really beautiful, unique colors in the center, So you can kind of imagine sort of this very spiked butterfly, if you will, I guess is
Hmm.
the best way to describe it. And so in the center, you've got orange and yellow. That's kind of like in the shape of a cigar. And then the trap itself, where it opens up, so kind of like butterfly wings,
Hmm.
those colors are painted in a pastel purples and pinks, reds, oranges, with a contour of greens and yellows. And then on the edges of the trap wings are these spikes that mimic it's called the teeth of the Venus flytrap. But they
Okay.
don't
Oh
actually
yes,
look like
yes.
teeth. They're more like spikes.
Oh my goodness. I love your description is so good. Describing art is very hard.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly hard. Everybody thinks they're good at it until they start to describe a painting and
Yeah.
then they realize how hard it is to put that into words. But you did such a great job. And I love how you started by saying how big the canvas was because that's nice. Oh, it's 18 by 24 because it could be the size of a building or it could be the size of a
Yeah.
postage stamp. So that helps to build the image in the mind. And it sounds like your use of color and complementary color. I can only imagine that the painting is bright and vibrant, and then you have all this thick paint on there. Oh my goodness! I wish I was there with you. I would love to be able to touch that painting. That just sounds
Oh,
beautiful.
thank you. Mhm.
I'm wondering so you've done so much in the past. You've accomplished so much. You've worked on so much. What are your plans for the future? Are you working on a project right now, or is there something that you're
Ooh.
hoping to do?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I am such a busy person just because it's in my nature to constantly be making things.
Mhm.
And right now, I am forcing myself to, still create, but really figure out the foundations of a business that I would love to launch in the next year. And so right now I am working with an entrepreneurship initiatives program called
Mhm.
Insight, and they are amazing. It's basically the best way that I can describe it is that it's boot camp for blind entrepreneurs.
Wow.
And yes, yeah, it's incredible. And so with my I've always loved painting big. I do a lot of smaller works, and that's mainly because the size of my room, you're always limited by the space that you have accessible to you as far as like how big you actually go. And I've been getting a little creative in my backyard. I rent a house I don't own, so I have to be mindful of what I end up doing. And so right now I am doing a bunch of research about tactile murals,
Mm,
and that is the business that I hope to launch is
really?
yes, yeah, so that
That's
is
brilliant.
thank you.
That is cool. Man, that sounds so interesting. I love to do murals. They're hard work,
Yeah.
and I've worked for years to kind of come up with a tactile sort of mural, but part of it's so hard. It's so, because you don't know what the weather's gonna, if it's an outdoor mural, the weather
Yeah.
and all this fun stuff. And that is brilliant that you're tackling that.
Yes.
That is wonderful.
Yeah, I have an opportunity to explore that realm. It's what I've been wanting to do. I've done collaborative murals many times in the past, and they weren't necessarily tactile. And, if I'm trying to find accessible ways of my smaller works of art to be accessible to everybody, including the blind, then why not on
Mhm.
a large scale as well? And what's great about tactile murals is that, it doesn't just necessarily benefit people who are blind, it benefits everybody. Everybody wants to touch art. Like, let's be honest. Like,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
they want to interact with it.
100%.
Yeah. And a lot of people, especially our neurodivergent friends, they process things differently. And so
Mhm.
they would just really get the most out of it if murals, including murals, were accessible to everybody with a tactile component, maybe some audio. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is brilliant. Oh my goodness. Yes. That sounds incredible. I wish you the absolute best luck with that.
Thank you.
That would be a wonderful thing. I think everybody would want a tactile mural. I think you're right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And when I first looked you up, John, that's basically what I typed into the Google search, if I remember correctly. I was like, blind muralist. And then you popped up. And so that's how our whole relationship began. Through through a school assignment to do an interview with artists, and I was like, well, I don't want to interview just any artist. Let me see if this artist will accept my invitation. And sure enough.
Well, I love the idea that you have of making murals more tactile. I know whenever I work on a mural, it is tactile, but it's very minimal. It's just it's the width of paint basically.
Yeah.
So, and
Hmm.
I use kind of a tacky sort of paint to draw with, and I've always thought it would be wonderful if somebody could do a really thick textured mural, and this tactile
Absolutely. And why
and
not? We've got concrete. I'm going to explore some more with joint compound,
mhm.
or mud is what other people call it. And so there's all different types of way. There's also, have you heard of moss graffiti? That's also a thing.
Oh
Which
no,
when you
no.
bring in like live botanicals, right? They won't like last forever, right? But there's a tactile component to that as well. So
That is so cool. My mind just exploded with ideas when you said that.
right?
I thought, oh my word, that's so cool.
Yes.
Wow.
And
Thank you for
then
that. Man.
absolutely. So talking about tripping the light fantastic earlier, for that installation we use copper conductive ribbons. And I just want to I need to point out there that the lead artists for this project was Sarah Stoller and Seth D. Myers. I feel like that's important to say, because it wasn't a project I completely made up on my own. Absolutely not contributing artist to that. And so what we used were copper conductive ribbons that basically hung down from an aerial rig. When you touched these ribbons, it would trigger a video of dancers and music. So when depending on like what ribbon you touched, you could create your own symphony with that. So knowing
Beautiful.
this about copper, what copper can do, why not also do that in a mural? And I know that there's an artist here in Albuquerque who's also experimenting with that. So I can't wait to connect with her sometime and
Wow.
explore
That
more.
that
Yeah.
sounds incredible.
Yes.
You have some really brilliant ideas. I can't wait to see what you do with it. And I can't wait to get out to New Mexico one of these days and visit one of your tactile murals that I know they're going to be all over the city. I'm sure one of these days very soon. But I have a question for you. I know that so you've had to navigate like all these personal challenges, and hearing you talk about it now, and you're so confident with your artwork and who you are as a person. Like it comes through in your voice. And you're making all this incredible artwork, and it's very meaningful artwork. I was just wondering what sort of advice that you would give to emerging artists that are facing their own obstacles and their own creative journeys.
Yeah. Thank you so much for all that. That's a lot to me. I will say that it's a constant work in progress. You have to keep practicing talking about your work and talking to other people about it, and then be comfortable with feeling humiliated. I think ultimately I reached a point where becoming visually impaired, it happened very traumatically, I will say. And so I felt like I had experienced there's really nothing worse with to experience than other than death, right? So when you think about that, like the worst thing that can happen to you is that you die. Right? if you talk to another person about your art, are you going to die? No. So do it. Just talk to people. And I've definitely choked up a lot of times, and sometimes I still do. It really depends on like how well I'm feeling.
Mhm.
Like, making sure I had enough to eat, did I have enough of water to drink, did I get enough sleep, and then and then being around people who understand art. Okay, so that I think that is really important. This is a big reason why I love working with other artists, is because
Mhm.
we all have such unique views of the world, but also how to create, right? So all of these ideas that I just threw at you, right? It's a combination of like conversations that I've had with other artists who are passionate about the same things that I am, and are just passionate about art in general, right? And
Mhm.
to know that you're not ever going to find all the answers, there's always something to learn. So that was kind of a long answer, but in short, like, keep talking about your work. Don't just keep showing it to friends and families, because they're going to like your work no matter what, or not. I don't know. But like, talk to other artists who are going
I
to give
love
you,
that.
yeah.
That's such good advice because you can't live in fear, and if you're and that is one thing. Maybe one of the positive things about disability is that you learn how to face certain things,
Hmm.
in your life, and then that sometimes it can turn down the volume of other fears. Like it lets you be able to go out and pursue things because you're
Right.
less worried about it. That like you were saying, you're not going to die. If you show
Yeah.
your artwork or you talk about it, you're not going to fall over dead.
Right.
The
If any,
worst, maybe somebody
yeah,
doesn't like it. And if they don't like
exactly.
it, that's okay. That's just an opinion.
And then also, even if you don't think the opinion is relevant, then kind of reflect on that, like, why, or like, oh, that kind of hurt my feelings. Like, why did that hurt your feelings? You kind of, I feel like, as an artist, as a resilient artist, we do have to do a deep dive into self-reflection and
Mhm.
be aware of like how you present things. Um, so yeah,
That's
what's the
brilliant.
worst that can happen, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you need that. I know that we're afraid of criticism sometimes, and one of my favorite and least favorite things about my wife, Jackie, is that she's extremely honest when it comes to her criticisms with art, and it's wonderful. And sometimes I don't want to hear it. I'm like, well, I don't know, whatever. I don't know if you understand. And then I'll think about it for a while, and I go like, dang it, she's right. And this
Yeah.
what I was trying to do over there is just not working. And then other times, I might be the right one, but
Yeah, yeah, you can relish in that. That's okay. Yeah.
yeah. But being able to share it with others, though, it can lead to all kinds of things that you might never have anticipated. Well,
Mhm.
I know that whenever people hear your voice and they hear what you have to say, they're going to want to know more about you. Is there a way that the people can reach out to you, like find you on social media or a
Yes.
website?
Yes, absolutely. So I have Instagram and Facebook. Instagram at HM Bergerson, and Facebook, I believe, is Heather Bergerson. Should be. And I do have
We'll
a
find it.
website as well that is currently being updated, but it is still available to view for people, and that is heatherbergerson.com.
That is easy to remember. That is good. Oh my goodness. And I encourage everybody to get on social media and follow you, Heather, because it sounds like you have some amazing things that are going to be happening, and it will be so much fun to follow that. I of course already follow you everywhere. But Heather, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and chatting with me and letting me know a little bit more about your artwork.
Yeah, thank you, John. It was such a pleasure, and I always love talking with you. And I do feel like we can always talk for hours. So I was very, very excited and very honored that when you reached out to me for this. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
Able Voices is a production of the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education, led by me, Dr. Rhoda Bernard, the founding managing director. It is produced by Daniel Martinez del Campo. The intro music is by Kai Levin, and our closing song is by Sebastian Batista. Kai and Sebastian are students in the arts education programs at the Berkeley Institute for Accessible Arts Education. If you would like to learn more about our work, find us online at berkeley.edu/BIAAE or email us at BIAAE@berkeley, that's LEE.edu.